Every neighborhood has that one person who takes the HOA way too seriously, and for us, that person was Doyle Mason. He strutted through the streets like a sheriff without a badge, clipboard under one arm, phone ready to snap evidence of imaginary violations. He wasn't elected or appointed. He simply decided he was the law. And last week, he crossed a line that Grandpa wasn't going to ignore. It started at 5:30 a.m. with the creak of our backyard fence. I was half asleep pouring cereal when Grandpa, rocking on the porch with coffee in hand, muttered, "There he goes again." Sure enough, Doyle was climbing over our fence like a burglar, snapping pictures of Grandpa's tomato plants because he claimed they violated community aesthetics. Imagine that, a 75-year-old veteran growing tomatoes being treated like a criminal. I wanted to storm outside, but Grandpa lifted a hand and said, "Patience. Let a fool run long enough and he'll hang himself." That was Grandpa, calm, steady, the opposite of Doyle's manic energy. This wasn't Doyle's first offense. Twice before, we'd caught him lurking around the shed, once even rattling the door like he expected to find something illegal. Grandpa reported him, but the HOA president, Linda Clay, brushed it off with a smile. "Oh, Doyle's just enthusiastic." Enthusiastic? The man was violating state law under North Carolina Statute Section 14-159.13, but the HOA hid behind technicalities. When the sheriff explained that unless Doyle was caught in the act and charges filed on the spot, it would be our word against his, Grandpa decided to take matters into his own hands. For 3 days, he worked in the garage, humming country tunes while I fetched tools, and by the 4th day, our wrought iron gate had a new upgrade, low-voltage electric wiring, completely legal under state code as long as it was marked. Grandpa even posted a big yellow sign, "Electrified gate. Trespassers will be shocked." And sure enough, Doyle came creeping again before dawn. Grandpa sat calmly on the porch while I crouched behind the curtain, heart pounding. Doyle scaled the fence, boots crunching the gravel, muttering about violations. The moment his gloved hand gripped the gate, snap! A jolt ripped through him. He yelped like a kicked dog, flailed backward, and landed in the dirt. Grandpa didn't move. He just sipped his coffee and said, "That's the sound of justice." The whole neighborhood buzzed. Doyle limping down Maple Court was the day's entertainment, and though he tried spinning the story about illegal traps, no one bought it. Everyone had their own Doyle story, measuring grass, peeking through curtains, photographing kids' bikes. The man was a menace, and now he'd finally paid the price. But Doyle wasn't done. By noon, an emergency HOA meeting was called. Linda sat at the head of the table in pearls and that fake smile, while Doyle sat beside her with his arm in a sling for drama. He jabbed a finger at Grandpa and roared, "This man has installed a deadly weapon." Grandpa didn't flinch. He slid a folded paper across the table. "That's a state-approved permit," he said. "Fully legal." And the warning sign was posted. Linda tried to argue, claiming it was hostile and against the spirit of community living, but Grandpa's voice dropped into that gravelly tone that shuts people up. Spirit of community? How about respecting private property? Doyle has trespassed 3 times. Next time, I'll press charges. The room shifted. Neighbors spoke up. He came into my yard to measure my shrubs. He called my kids' bikes an eyesore. Doyle's face turned red as the tide turned. Linda banged the gavel, desperate to regain control, but Grandpa leaned forward. "This isn't about my gate. It's about Doyle thinking he runs the neighborhood. Well, now he knows what happens when you pick the wrong porch. If you think it ends here, you're wrong, because Doyle doubled down. For 2 days, he circled our block in his dented pickup like a vulture, slowing every time he passed our driveway. Grandpa ignored him, sipping coffee like nothing happened. Then, on the 3rd night, I woke to the crunch of gravel. Doyle was creeping toward the gate with a flashlight and bolt cutters, muttering curses. Grandpa was waiting, remote in hand. "Watch this, kid," he whispered. The second Doyle clamped the cutters on the gate. Zap! The surge hit him. He screamed, dropped the cutters, and stumbled into the mud. Grandpa sipped his coffee and muttered, "Trespassing again." Then he raised his phone and filmed the whole thing in perfect HD. Doyle, shaking, called 911, screaming, "Attempted murder!" Minutes later, red and blue lights flashed across the yard. Officers stepped out, eyeing Doyle, muddy, trembling, and Grandpa, calm as ever in his chair. "Sir," one officer asked, "is that gate electrified?" "Yes," Grandpa replied, handing over the laminated permit and the video. The officers watched Doyle climbing, cutting, and zapping himself, all on camera. "So," one officer said, "you trespassed?" Doyle stammered, "No, I was conducting an HOA inspection." "At midnight?" "With bolt cutters." The other officer deadpanned. It was over. Doyle was charged with trespassing, vandalism, attempted theft, and filing a false report. They cuffed him right there in front of half the neighborhood, who clapped as the patrol car rolled away. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting. "Sometimes," he said, "justice just needs a little electricity." And Doyle? He left in handcuffs, sweaty and humiliated, his fake HOA power gone. The gate he thought he could conquer became the thing that destroyed him, because when you mess with a man like Grandpa, you don't just lose the fight, you light the fuse that burns your whole game down.